What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about Lucid. I've seen over this last couple weeks a lot of crazy price targets given for Lucid, coming from primarily retail. Some are saying $10, $25 by the end of this year, so 2024. I kind of see that as a little bit crazy if you ask me, but I wanted to go over where I realistically think Lucid is going to be by the end of 2024. So I'll give you my bull and bear case. So I'm going to go over all the things that you need to know, but first make sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. And with that said, let's get right to it. So starting off, when it comes down to Lucid at the time of doing this video, it is at $2.49, as you can kind of clearly see. I'm just going to basically lay out what Lucid has planned so far in 2024 that could obviously move the stock price. Then I'm going to go over multiples and whatever else. So clearly, the biggest thing for Lucid is the gravity. And so that is estimated to come out near the tail end of the year. Based on the last conferences that Peter did participate in, I think based on the tone, it is fair to assume it is going to be in November or December. So causing the reservations to open up probably 1 month prior to that. Because I think with the release of the Air, various versions of that, they did kind of mess up. I think they did it too far in advance, so they started to pre-build a lot of those vehicles, and then people just canceled. So this is where Lucid was left with a excessive amount of inventory that so far they've been kind of struggling to kind of get out. Over the last earnings, I think they were a little bit more optimistic on getting a lot of those inventory out into the open market, but still beside the point, that's probably how they're going to do the gravity. So that is the next big catalyst. Aside from that, they don't really have that much crazy expansion plan. So no big facilities, no AMP3, a lot of speculation. There's always been a lot of speculation when it comes down to Lucid. But aside from that, the only targets that we do know is 9,000 vehicles delivered by the end of the year. So I think based on everything, they're going to come very close to that, kind of in line with that. So that's definitely a very big must. But when it comes to Lucid, there's different rules of thought coming from retail investors on how they should be really appropriately valued, meaning the multiple. Because a lot of people always like to gravitate towards well, Lucid doesn't need to ramp up on production. Like that was never their plan. They always want to have a lower output and everything like that. They're very similar to Ferrari. That's one very common argument among bulls. And so ultimately, I'm going to go over here. So you can kind of see the PS ratio, and obviously Ferrari is profitable. So you always want to look at PE, but with Lucid not being profitable, it's kind of fair to just use the PS ratio across the board. So looking at Ferrari, the current PS ratio is 11.4, future is 10.4. So you are paying a fairly high premium when it comes down to that, or this company right here. So on the flip side, over their last earnings, and plus even during the last conference where Peter did say that he really wants to ramp up, he's said that time and time again. Just I feel like they've done, as I've said in many videos, they are very crappy at marketing. So a lot of people still do not generally know what Lucid is. And because of that crappy marketing, the demand isn't necessarily there for Lucid. So thus, they do have the intention of ramping up. And if the demand was there, they definitely would obviously provide, right? The only thing as well, what Peter did say during the last conference, I think it was the Evercore one, the summit that he participated in, one question was brought up: how much for gravity vehicles are you planning on providing for output? And Peter surprisingly didn't have an answer to that, so that wasn't necessarily the best. But beside the point, he did say that we are going to produce as many as we can, given the market demand. So clearly, that goes to show that they themselves do not want to act like a Ferrari. They would rather be more like a Tesla. And I know Tesla has lots of different segments, so their multiple isn't necessarily just EVs by themselves. But looking right now at Tesla for the PS ratio, 6.2 and 5.6 for the future. Now, let's look at Lucid. Currently 9.3, future is 6.8. So the market right now is kind of leaning for Lucid to be more like a Ferrari rather than a kind of Tesla equivalent. So this is where a lot of people as well on the flip side say, hey, if Lucid does produce, let's say 15,000, 20,000, we're going to go up to the moon. That's not necessarily how this works. Right now, you're kind of paying a premium for Lucid vehicles. And so essentially, if you're kind of having higher output but having lower margins, which would technically happen with lower priced vehicles, because that's what Peter keeps saying for that mid-size SUV, that's going to be the kind of point that puts them to profitability. So that's probably going to be in 2027 most likely, or either 2028. But still, beside the point though, Lucid technically won't get that crazy bump up in the price because the multiple would essentially go down as they do increase their output. So it's one of those sticky kind of scenarios that I think just Wall Street has really pinned Lucid against the wall. And there is various different factors as a byproduct of that. Largely just any startup does dilute like crazy. So in my opinion, I think that is why Wall Street is putting Lucid where it is right now, is because of the constant dilution and future dilution. Even Peter did say during both the conferences, so the Evercore and the Deutsche Bank one, that they are going to need a lot of capital in the foreseeable future. And I think that's just one of the things why a lot of people were wondering why, as a byproduct of those conferences, Lucid went down. And it's because why would any entity want to get into a company knowing that it is going to dilute significantly in the foreseeable future? All the way up to profitability for the most part. So long story short, I do feel that Lucid is kind of more of a hybrid. They do want to be more of equivalent to a Tesla, but right now the market is kind of factoring it more of a Ferrari, so lower output and whatever else. So technically, if Lucid does really ramp up, they're not going to see this crazy bump up in the stock price where it'll hit $50 and or possibly even higher than that. And one thing as well I wanted to kind of talk on that would really help it in 2024 is rate cuts. And so far, based on the September 18th, 2024 meeting, there is a 59.5% likelihood of a 25 basis point cut. So let's say everything goes according to plan. So Lucid does produce the 9,000 by the end of the year, or deliver by the end of the year, and then they also do unveil the Gravity, and also there is interest rate cuts at least by 25 basis points, then this is where on the high end I feel like Lucid could be roughly around that $4.50 range. And I know a lot of people might say, what the hell are you on? Like, that's way too low. The market overall has a lot of fear. I think a lot of people don't seem to fully realize that. Because even though the S&P is at basically all-time highs, you have the majority of larger entities and kind of the real big money moving away from equities into money markets. And they've been doing that ever since 2023. Because they'd rather earn the 3 to, obviously at the time, to 5% now in these money markets than risking it in the broader market, which so far has been somewhat good, because even in Lucid's case over the last 1 year, it is down 58.84%. Just in 2024 alone, it is down 40.86%. So in my opinion, I think on the bear case by the end of the year, Lucid could be roughly around the $1.60 to $1.80 range. So again, it's kind of within that range, so $1.80, and that's given the circumstances of more of a broader market pullback, and that's obviously linked to as well consumers not having the best data and not really out there buying vehicles and whatever else. And so in reality, that's kind of the spectrum I do feel. So just make sure you guys always do your own due diligence. If you're one of those individuals that thinks $10 is realistic by the end of this year, definitely have at you. That's crazy optimistic, because you have to factor in that's like a 4x from these prices. And I don't think, like, people are bringing up Nvidia, right? And they've gone up quite a lot in this year just alone, right? So over this last 1 year, up 194%. So people are kind of out there saying that Lucid is going to 4x in 6 months, or I guess now less than 6 months, by the end of 2024. That's just not really appropriate thinking. And even when it comes down to Nvidia, like, a lot of people are saying that is a bubble in among itself. And you have to also factor in, if Lucid is at this right here of 4x, their ratios are going to be like significantly higher, like probably 10 times higher than Tesla. So why would anyone really gravitate towards Lucid when there's many other discounted EVs out there, right? Because big money likes to get deals. They don't like to just kind of piggyback off of hype. So in my opinion, like I said, around $1.80 will be the low by the end of the year. And then on the flip side, probably as best case scenario, assuming everything in the market, you have interest rate cuts, we don't have a pullback, the data is absolutely strong as hell, then you'll probably see around 450. So that's just my quick mentality when it comes down to Lucid. I could be wrong, I could be right. We'll just have to wait and see. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Let me know in the comments below where you feel Lucid is going to be by the end of 2024 and potentially why. What's your mentality when it comes down to that? Don't forget to hit that thumbs up. Hopefully everyone's having an amazing weekend thus far, and with all that, appreciate all of you watching.